What is going on, everybody? It's Clint here from the Pub Sports Radio, bringing to you the Total Takedown. UFC 279 just got up, wrapping up doing a video with my guy Locke, so I apologize for the brutal intro. I'm not ready to go on my own show just yet because of all the content going on right now. My brain is going a million miles a second. We're talking totals. Hit the like button for me. Subscribe here to Pub Sports Radio if you haven't already. These lines are presented to you by Superbook Sports. First fight of the night, we have got Johan Lainez taking on Darian Weeks. The total here is 2.5. We've got the over at plus 120, the under at minus 140, and I feel like this is kind of a choose your fighter situation. Now, Johan Lainez has gone the full 15 minutes before. It's happened. It's just rare. Mostly he nukes people. Darian Weeks has shown super high durability so far in the UFC. Short notice opportunity, couple of tough battles, nobody with the power of Johan Lainez, so that's really going to be tested here on Saturday. If he keeps that up, though, I feel like he's kind of a decision machine. He's not a guy that likes to put himself at any type of danger. He doesn't put himself in bad positions. So it's going to come down to, can Johan Lainez clip him and crack him? And if he does not get the finish, will Darian Weeks be able to pour on the effort to get Johan Lainez out of there similarly to Gabe Green? Or will he take a safer, more grappling heavy route and work his way to a decision? Pick your poison, man. If you're going under, you're probably banking on Johan Lainez. If you're going over, you're banking on Darian Weeks. Now, maybe Johan just collapses in on himself the same way he did against Gabe Green, and then you can cash a Darian Weeks ticket on the under 2.5 as well. I'm kind of liking the over. I feel like Darian Weeks is going to take a very slow plotting type of fight style here and try to avoid the big bomb. I also think Johan may come out a little bit more timid with a guy like Weeks not pushing the pace the way that Gabe Green did. I think Johan can conserve a little bit more of his energy and drag the fight a little bit deeper. I lean to the over 2.5 at plus 120, but overs with power punchers is terrifying and it doesn't usually go well. So I'm not going to be betting that one myself. Elise Reed taking on Melissa Martinez. Women's MMA total set at 2.5. Over is minus 240. Under is plus 210. And I think the over makes a ton of sense here. Neither of these women like grappling. Both of them like striking. Granted, one of them could clip the other. But at this weight class, standing knockouts are not really a big thing. So unless Melissa Martinez has, rapidly increased her grappling ability and takes Elise Reed down and pounds her out, I have a hard time envisioning any kind of a finish. We'll save some time. I'll say over and move on. Alatang Haley taking on Chad and Hellinger in the next fight. Total again at 2.5. The over is minus 175. The under is plus 155. And the over just makes so much sense to me here. Alatang Haley is a guy that has incredible durability. He's so hard to crack. We saw the beating that he took from Kennedy not too long ago. Chad and Hellinger doesn't have that kind of offensive power. However, his output is solid as a high-paced athlete. His wrestling defense is a little bit poor. He does leave something to be desired there. He gets taken down, and that's a path to victory I think Alatang Haley can definitely take in this fight. Unless Alatang Haley lands a nuke or taps out Tad Ellinger on the mat with a slick submission or something that I don't really expect happening, I do think we're in for a full 15-minute fight here, so I would lean to the over 2.5 at minus 175. Danielle Wolf making her return to the cage, taking on Norma Dumont. Total again at 2.5 for this one. Over is minus 205. Under is plus 180. And I talked about this on the Monday podcast. I actually think violence makes some sense here in this spot. Danielle Wolf is massive for this weight class. She's a much more technical boxer than Norma Dumont is. I think she stands a chance of cracking Norma on the feet. And on the flip side, Norma has such a big grappling advantage. And she's got raw power. She hurts pretty much everybody she's in the cage with at one point or another. I just worry about the sense of urgency. I think there is opportunity for both these women to finish. We've seen Norma Dumont cracked and KO'd. We saw Danielle Wolf even on her Contender Series fight. She got hurt in that fight and nearly finished by a 3-0 fighter. There's definitely upside to both women finishing here and getting plus 180 on the under 2.5, where Norma's got such a drastic grappling advantage over her opponent. I think that makes some sense. I might be taking the flyer on violence in that fight. Chris Barnett taking on Jake Collier. Total again at 2.5. The over is plus 110. The under is minus 130. And I kind of like the over. Now, this is like middle of the road, low level, super low level heavyweights here in this spot. But Chris Barnett, he does the Homer Simpson thing. He tries to drag you into deep waters, and after you get tired beating on him, then he flips the script and tries to take you out of there. Problem is, that's not going to work at this level against legitimate heavyweights. Jake Collier is a guy who built his game plan on volume, hits pretty damn hard. He showed off a half-decent submission game. I think he can probably handle Chris Barnett any which way he wants to take this fight. However, I'm not sure he's going to be sitting down on his punches hard enough to be able to get the finish here. I know a lot of people are banking on him getting Chris Barnett out of there in like the second or the third round. I'm not convinced it's going to be that easy. For me, I think Chris Barnett has a lot riding on this one. The passing of his wife, he's a single dad now trying to put food on the table for his kids. He's going to be coming out looking to win this fight any way he can. And I'm not sure he can beat Jake Collier technically in any way. So I think he might try to drag this fight late, in which case I think we might be headed all 15 minutes. I would lean on the over 2.5, but not a very confident read, and definitely not a fight that I'm going to be putting my money on. Jamie Pickett taking on Dennis Tululian. Total again at 2.5. Over is -125. Under is +105. And I would lean on... I've been going back and forth on this fight so much, guys. It's another one, like we talked about. These two kind of line up. Jamie Pickett and the over, Dennis and the under. Dennis is a guy that walks forward, 1-2s down the pipe, tries to crack his opponents, big power. Jamie Pickett, even though he's got big power, he's risk adverse. He likes to pin his opponents up against the cage and slow down the pace of the fight, grind that clock away. I think Dennis might be able to crack Jamie once or twice here in this fight, and if he can capitalize on that, I think he can get Jamie Pickett out of there. And if he doesn't capitalize on that, I think we're headed for a greasy 15-minute decision where Dennis still might get the nod just because he's the one throwing the more active punches, whereas Jamie tries to, dip under, pin him against the cage, grind the clock away. The judges aren't really favoring that all that much these days. So I do kind of think this one goes over. I wouldn't be shocked if Dennis cracks Jamie and puts him down at some point, though. So not one that I'm overly excited about laying -125 with. Anton taking on Jailton Almeida. Total set at 1.5 for this one. Over 1.5 is +145. The under 1.5 is -165. And as bad as it sounds, I'd be looking at the over here. I know that's going to get me some flack because, dear God, Jailton Almeida, this guy just takes people down and smokes them in the first round. But Anton is not a bad prospect. 8-0 with a grapple-heavy game plan himself. I wonder if he can just compete. Not win, but compete. Not win, but survive. Like, that's what I'd be looking here for Anton. I know everyone thinks it's just Jailton round one because that's what he does to everybody, but he's fighting another young, hungry fighter who's getting jumped into the UFC, looking for his opportunity at the big show. I would want to throw a flyer on the over 1.5 and say, you know what, we're just going to get halfway through that second round. That's all I need is for this guy to survive halfway through that second round and cash a +145 ticket. I don't think I've got the balls to actually make that bet, though, if I'm being honest with you. That's kind of the way I lean. I think this fight might surprise a few people, but if Jailton comes out, rips this guy to the ground, and TKOs him in the first, am I really going to be surprised? Not at all. That's what this guy does. So definitely no conviction there. I'm not going to be betting it, but I lean ever so slightly to the value on that over, getting that plus money. Julian Erosa taking on Hakeem Dawodu. Total set at 2.5 here at Superbook Sports. The over 2.5 is -130. The under 2.5 is +110. And I should have jumped on this immediately. I talked about this on the podcast, and I kind of like violence here. I think this fight is going to go under. The 2.5 scares me a little bit because we've seen what Julian Erosa does late in fights. I think I'd rather bet that he doesn't go the distance at even money than getting the 2.5 at +110. I know buying that 2 minutes and 30 seconds can sometimes be a problem. You miss out on the value. Long term, maybe it's the wrong choice. But we've seen Julian Erosa really come to life in those final 2 minutes and 30 seconds. So because of him specifically, I think I would want those included in my bet. But I kind of lean violence here. The way Julian Erosa fights, he forces these technical brawls, these semi-technical brawls. He wings these big power hooks from the outside. He's exceptionally hittable. And Hakeem Dawodu is just so tight, so technical. The leg kicks, he busts people up. And when they open themselves up, he takes advantage of the opportunity to crack them. I know he's been a decision machine, but we've seen Juicy J's chin get touched before. And if he opens up looking for that kill shot, I think Dawodu can actually put this guy away. Now on the flip side, the way Juicy J fights, he puts himself right in that fire. He could finish Hakeem Dawodu. I've talked about the durability issues of Hakeem Dawodu, and I think someone that hits as hard as Juicy J might be able to be the guy that gets it done. So I'm kind of looking at the under here. Cuțelaba taking on Johnny Walker. Total set at 1.5 for this one. Over is +130. Under is -150. And again, I struggle. Because Johnny Walker is not the round one flying knee knockout machine that we know anymore. He's been slowing the pace down. He's a bit more defensively sound. He's been talking about training his Muay Thai so he gets hit less. We saw the staring contest with Thiago Santos. Even though that one's kind of a drop in the hat, I don't know that we can really say that's who Johnny Walker is at this point anymore. It definitely lends itself to the fact that he is not rushing in to strike his opponents. But his opponent, Cuțelaba, is a guy who's going to force the fight. Ion is not a guy that stays back. He does not play the technical game. He's going to look for blast double legs. He's going to look to rip you to the ground. He's going to look to pound your face in once he gets on the mat. And I think that's going to force Johnny Walker to fight. Now, the last couple times we've seen Ion in these barn burner brawls, he sticks his neck out. He's been guillotined. We saw him get knocked out by Magomedov. Now, it's a different level of fighter, but Johnny Walker's another big, strong dude that can crack. I definitely think both these guys are capable of finishing. Does it happen in the first round is the question here. Because if Ion gets a takedown and this thing gets dragged into the second, we've seen Johnny Walker go a full 15 minutes. We've seen him go a full 25 minutes. This fight does have some ability to go over, even though everyone thinks it's going to be over quick. If he takes a risk-adverse style of fight here, this thing could last a little bit longer than people are expecting. I'm never betting an over with these two types of fighters, though. Two guys that can nuke each other with no problem. Both of them with issues. One with a gas tank issue, one with a chin issue. No way I can bet an over in that spot. I have to say the under. Macy Chiasson taking on Irene Aldana. Total here is at 2.5. The over minus 190. The under is plus 170. And this is another sneaky one where I think there might be some chance that the under cashes. Macy Chiasson cutting back down to 135. You know, she looked okay at 145, but outsized, outstrength a little bit up there at that weight class at 135. She struggles with the weight cut. She has a hard time on the scales. I'll be curious to see how she looks on Saturday. Irene Aldana, much more technical boxer, good footwork, attacks the body. That drains the gas tank even further. I think she can find a finish here. Now, Irene Aldana is somebody who's shown that she can defend the grappling against people like Raquel Pennington. She can defend the grappling against the likes of Holly Holm. So I'm not sure that even if Macy Chiasson does get her to the ground, it's necessarily over or anything like that, but Macy can finish on the mat. She's got subs. She's got ground and pound. She's big, long. She's got those elbows. This fight could go under. At the same time, if Irene Aldana wants to fall into the same pattern that we've seen before with girls like Rocky, with women like Holly Holm, Macy Chiasson can mix in the grappling, mix in the body lock, drag her against the cage, slow this fight down, and it'll go a full 15 minutes, and we've got a hairy split decision where we're not sure who the judges are going to side with. So I can see arguments for both sides on this one. My gut tells me Irene Aldana eventually puts Macy Chiasson down at some point, so I'm going to say the under 2.5. But I would rather bet Irene Aldana by knockout than play the under 2.5 personally. That's just the way I look at the fight. Kevin Holland taking on Daniel Rodriguez. The total's 2.5 for this bad boy. Over 2.5 is minus 105. The under 2.5 is minus 115. So near pick'em here on this one. And I get it. Kevin Holland is a guy that's a finisher, but he plays with his food. And at a 180-pound catch weight, he's probably going to have a slight size advantage here in the spot, weight-wise. You know, he's fully comfortable fighting at 185. No problem doing that in the past. Rodriguez is a normal 170-pounder. I'm not sure how much he cuts, though. That's a big question for me here, is I'm not sure if that's going to be a big influence on these guys Saturday or not. But Kevin Holland, he'll have a reach advantage. I think he's slightly faster. Rodriguez may be a little bit more technical. He's got the wrestling in his back pocket. We've seen Kevin struggle with that. But when he's fighting guys that are smaller, not 185ers, 170-pounders, Kevin Holland is not as susceptible to the grappling as he was up a weight class. So I'm not sure that Daniel Rodriguez is going to look to grind this guy out with the wrestling. The path is there. He could do it. We've seen it. But I don't know if he's even going to bother going for it. I more think we get a 15-minute technical striking matchup, in which case, if Holland plays with his food, this thing goes 15 minutes. If Daniel Rodriguez is being underestimated by me, which has happened essentially his entire career, this thing could be a competitive 15-minute striking match. I'm kind of looking at the over, minus 105, over 2.5. That'd be the way I would lean. Jingliang taking on Tony Ferguson, total again at 2.5. We've got Tony moving up a weight class after that brutal knockout. The over's over 2.5 is plus 110. Under 2.5 is minus 130. Tony Ferguson has become a bit of a decision machine. He survives. His durability up until last fight seemed like it was still relatively intact, but now he's taken on a guy a much higher weight class that hits potentially harder than someone like Chandler does. That's a good question. Does the Leech hit harder than Michael Chandler? I'm not entirely sure. He does have some extra poundage on his body, but Michael Chandler also hits like a monster and is built like a brick. So, good question. The Leech has made some grappling mistakes in the past. He's also been, out-volumed or out-techniqued by some people in the past. I think Tony Ferguson is live to pull this thing late and, just kind of win a volume attritional-based type of matchup. And that would fly over if that was the case. If the Leech can't find the button on Tony, if Tony's able to use that awkward style, that outside footwork and movement, if the Leech can't just pinpoint him and crack him to put him down, this thing probably does go a full 15 minutes. So I'm kind of tempted here on this over 2.5. I think that's live in this spot. But with what we've seen from Tony, moving up a weight class, class, late in your career, not adding any muscle, short turnaround after a bad knockout. I wouldn't be shocked at all if the Leech just cracks him and puts him away super early. Main event time, Nate Diaz taking on Khamzat Chimaev. Total for this one is set at 1.5 here at Superbook Sports. The over is -145, the under is +125, and I've seen some people out there making the argument for Nate Diaz, surprising people, lasting longer than we're giving him credit for, hanging around more than people think. But Nate's also been on the microphone saying he wants nothing to do with this fight. He's not interested in this fight. You know, they forced him into this one. He wants to fight out his contract. He wants to get out from under that thing. His brother straight up quit in his last fight against Robbie Lawler. I mean, we're talking move the fight an entire weight class because he quit doing the road work and came in with a spare tire instead of being shredded for fight night. I wouldn't be shocked if Nate Diaz did something similarly. He doesn't look like he's in the best shape. He doesn't look like he's taking this fight as seriously as he took his last one. I kind of think there's some element of throwing the towel in here. And I also think that the way Khamzat Chimaev deals with people on the mat, I think the referee is going to be very closely watching this fight. They're not going to let Nate Diaz get beat within an inch of his life. If he's taking some damage and it doesn't look good, I think the referee will step in and stop it. You know, it's not the same thing as PFL, but you look over and you watch like the Kayla Harrison fight. As soon as her opponents get in a bad position, the referees jump all over it because they just know. There is a difference between those two fighters, and their job is to save the fighter from further damage. I think that's kind of what we're dealing with here. Potentially washed 155er moving up to 170, a guy who's never dealt well with wrestling, taking on the uncrowned champion of this weight class, the guy that's got all the hype on him, the guy that smashes everybody in the first round. As soon as Khamzat gets on top of Nate and starts raining down elbows, I think the referee's going to take action relatively quickly. I would be looking at the under 1.5, even though it's +125 and that seems a little gimmicky, a little tricky. That's the way that I would look. You know, if you can get that alternate line of under 2.5, you got to lay some chalk on that, but I wouldn't mind that as well. It's a little bit safer. It gives Nate the chance to at least survive that first round and get through the second round. You've still got some time on the clock for Khamzat to smash the way he does. So I'm looking at violence there in the main event. I would definitely be looking under. That's the Total Takedown, folks. Thank you very much for watching. Hit the like button for me. Sub here to Pub Sports Radio if you haven't already. We will see you tomorrow for the undefeated post-weigh-in show. Don't forget your tinfoil hat. Let's roll.